Chapter 20 Drafting Room, Atlantic Express Depot, 1959. There was meant to be a maintenance team here instead of me, Bill groused as he bent to examine the cracks in the curved metal wall of the maintenance runoff tunnel. I had some gitful splicer. Was going to creep up the walls and fix the leaks they couldn't reach. Don't know what became of the buggers. Karlowski grunted. I think I see your maintenance team. Bill stood up, walked over to Karlowski. Together they looked through a window into the mailroom of Jet Postal. The shadowy, indirectly lit room was scattered with undelivered mail, with the bodies, several bodies, men in maintenance coveralls, lying about on the floor, motionless, pasted to the deck with their own blood. They seemed to have been hacked up by some sharp blade. Bill sighed, stomach contracting at the sight. Yeah, I don't see that splicer. Maybe. Karlowski nodded, musing, patting the breech of his Tommy gun. Not good workers, those splicers, he said dryly. They go crazy, they kill. A man does not get the job done when busy being crazy and killing. After a moment he shrugged and added, unless killing is the job. Well, I'm going to make a list of cracks and leaks and get a team in here with a constable escort, Bill said. I can't risk, he broke off, staring at the small figure in the pinafore, a child, moving through the shadows of the Jet Postal sorting room, and steel boots clanked. A great metal shape loomed up behind her. A big daddy and a little sister. She skipped along, a large syringe in one hand, singing a song they couldn't clearly hear, something about Mr. Bubbles and the angels. Her enormous chaperone stumped along but close behind her. Bill and Karlowski watched with an uneasy mix of fascination and revulsion as the little girl squatted by a man's awkwardly sprawling, face-down corpse and jammed the syringe into the back of his neck. She did something with the syringe, chirping happily to herself, and began to glow with extracted atom. Bill stepped closer to the window and bent over to peer at the little sister. Karlowski, is that Mashka? Karlowski groaned to himself. Yes, maybe, maybe not. All little sisters look much alike to me. If it's her, I owe it to her folks to get her back. We tried, Bill. You spoke to many people. No one would help. That's why I've got to do this myself right now. Please don't argue with Big Daddy, Bill. Oh, there's a splicer. A spider splicer was creeping upside down on the ceiling over the little sister. He had a hooked blade in one hand. He was chattering to himself. The intervening pane of glass muted the sound. The little sister stood up, turned toward the Big Daddy. Then the blade spun past her, whipping through the air like a boomerang. The blade nearly missed her head, so close it cut a bit of her hair, which drifted prettily away. The weapon circled the room and returned to the splicer, who caught the blade handle neatly, cackling as he did it. The little sister's guardian reacted instantly. The Big Daddy stepped into a pool of light, raised its rivet gun to aim at the ceiling, and fired a long strafe of rivets at the spider splicer. The gun nailed its target at such close range, it cut the splicer in half. The spider splicer's lower half and its upper half clung to the ceiling, separately by feet and hands, the two halves gushing blood. Then they let go, and halves of the splicer dropped heavily on the floor. The little girl chirruped happily. You'll see, Karlowski whispered. If you interfere with her, you'll end up like him. I've got to try, Bill said. Maybe if you distract them, I can grab her. Oh shit, Bill, you son of a bitch bastard, Karlowski said, and muttered another imprecation in Russian. You'll get me killed. I got faith in your gift for self-preservation, mate. Come on. Bill led the way to the door of the Jet Postal sorting room. He hesitated, wondering what Elaine would want him to do. She would want Mosca, if this little sister was in fact Mashka, but Elaine didn't want to risk himself this way. Still, there probably wouldn't be another chance. He opened the door and then stepped back, crouching down to one side, signaling to Karlowski. Do it, then run. Karlowski swore in Russian once more, but he raised his Tommy gun and fired a short burst toward the Big Daddy. A burst from a Tommy gun wasn't going to kill it, and Karlowski wouldn't risk the wrath of his employers by destroying the valuable cyborg, but it got the Big Daddy's attention. The lumbering metal golem turned and rushed like an accelerating freight train at the source of the assault. Karlowski was already running, cursing Bill as he went. The Big Daddy clanged past Bill, not seeing him crouching by the door. Bill slipped behind the metal guardian. and through the door, seeing the little sister standing up from another extraction, blood-dripping syringe in her hand. She looked at him with big eyes, mouth open to a round O. Was this Mashka? He wasn't sure. "Mr. Bubbles," she called. "There's a bad man here waiting to be turned into an angel." "Mashka," Bill said. "Is that you?" He took a step toward her. "Listen, I'm going to pick you up, but I won't hurt you." Then a metallic clumping close behind Bill turned his blood cold. He spun around just in time to be struck across the chest. The Big Daddy returned to protect his charge, swinging the weapon in its hand like a club. Bill was knocked backward off his feet. The air smacked from his lungs, the room whirling. Gasping, he lost consciousness for a few moments. When the spinning specks formed shapes and the room coalesced, he looked dizzily around, saw that he was sitting on the floor, back against a bulkhead. The Big Daddy and his little charge were nowhere to be seen. Bill got up, moaning to himself with the pain of his bruised chest, and staggered to the door. He was met by Karlowski. "You okay, Bill?" "Yeah, good to see you alive. Thought you'd been killed." "No, I outsmart that steel bastard. Look." He pointed across the open space of the depot. On the far wall, the little girl was climbing into one of those key-shaped Art Deco apertures that the little sisters used to enter hidden passageways. They scuttled through the passageways to take their scavenge Adam back to Ryan's laboratories. Mashka or not Mashka, he would never know. She simply vanished into the wall. The Big Daddy waited quietly by the big Art Deco keyhole for his little sister to return. Bill shook his head and turned away, grimacing with pain and wanting only to get back to Elaine. Once more, his determination to escape Rapture was underscored. He had to get his family back to the surface, back to blue sky and sunlight and freedom. Medical Pavilion, Aesthetic Ideals Surgery, 1959. Ryan and Adam and Ryan. All those years of study, and I was ever truly a surgeon before I met him. How we plinked away our scalpels and toy morality. Yes, we could lop a boil here and shave down a beak there, but who could really change anything? No. But Adam gives us the means to do it, and Ryan frees us from the phony ethics that held us back. Change your look, change your sex, change your race. It's yours to change, and nobody else's. Wearing a blood-soaked surgical gown and white surgeon's cap, his hands in rubber gloves, Dr. J.S. Steinman hit pause on a little tape recorder that he wedged between the blonde patient's ample breasts, and he pushed the gurney, its wheels susurrating through the shallow water that had leaked across the floor of the surgery. He hummed to himself, singing an Ink Spot song, "If I Didn't Care," over the muffled moaning of the patient he'd strapped to the little wheeled bed. Why would I be sure that this is love beyond compare? Would all this be true if I didn't care for you? He pushed the woman into a place under a glaring surgical light and reached into his coat pocket for his favorite scalpel. Tiresome to do without a nurse, but he'd had to kill Nurse Chavez when she started whining about his efforts to please Aphrodite, threatening to turn him into the constables. Of course, he hadn't killed her till he'd done some fine experimentation on her doll-like visage. He still had Chavez's face in a freezer and refrigerator somewhere, along with some others he'd peeled off and saved in preservative jars, faces from patients who'd given their lives for his perfect fusion of art. He really must try to organize his preserved faces with a filing system. Steinman paused to admire this latest woman writhing in her restraints on the gurney. She used some low-grade plasma to help her hack a gambling machine in Fort Frolic, and his fellow artist, Sander Cohen, who owned the casino, had caught her. It was getting hard to find voluntary patients. He didn't think he might get Diane McClintock to come in again. He longed to alter her in another manner entirely, according to his artistic whim, to give her a truly transcendent face. He might get a hold of telekinesis plasmid and use it to form her face from within, shape it telekinetically into something lovely. They were all so ugly, honestly, so plain. They didn't try hard enough to make themselves fitting vessels for Aphrodite. But they're filthy, filthy at the core, he muttered. No knife was sharp enough to cut that filth out. He tried and tried and tried, but they were always so fat or short or plain. Steinman made a tisk sound as the blonde woman shrieked unintelligibly at him through the gag, some insult perhaps. My dear, I'd love to give you some anesthetic to grace your experience, I really would, but I have quite the run out of it. And anyway, there is something else less aesthetically pleasing about sculpting an unconscious patient. If they are unconscious, the blood hardly spurts at all. Their eyes don't have that look of possession by the god of terror. How satisfying could that be, now I ask you? I may have to stop and have some more Adam and a touch of Eve myself. Oh, do try to accept this, my dear. Appreciate it as a sacrificial aesthetic experience, a sacrifice to Aphrodite. Senator Cohen and I have talked about doing a performance on stage with one of my little surgeries. Can you imagine? A face sculpting set to original music. The trouble is, of course, he bent near his wild-eyed patient to whisper confidentially. The trouble is, my dear, Senator Cohen is quite insane. Mad, out of his mind. I shouldn't socialize with Cohen, that Looney Tune. I have my reputation to think of. He hit record again on the tape recorder and cleared his throat and set down another immortal memo. With genetic modifications, beauty is no longer a goal or even a virtue. It is a moral obligation. Still, Adam presents new problems for the professional, he said for the audio diary. As your tools improve, so do your standards. There was a time I was happy enough to take off a wart or two, or turn a real circus freak into something you could show in the daylight. So saying, he started carving deeply into the face of the woman on the gurney, glad he'd taken the trouble to brace her head in place because she was shaking so much with agony as he sliced away in her cheeks. He went on. But that was then, and when we took what we got, but with Adam, the flesh becomes clay. What excuse do we have not to sculpt and sculpt and sculpt until the job is done? He hit pause on the tape recorder, its buttons becoming slippery with the blood on his hands, and considered his work. It was hard to tell enough, all the blood and torn tissue. My dear, I believe I'm going to give you some Adam that will regrow your face into another shape entirely. Then I'll carve the new tissue some more. Then I'll regrow some more face on you with Adam. And I'll carve that some more. And another muffled shriek from the woman. He sighed, shaking his head. I just would not understand. He hit record again and accompanied the next wet, spurting spate of carving with a kind of artistic manifesto. When Picasso became bored of painting people, he started representing them as cubes and other abstract forms. The world called him a genius. I've spent my entire surgical career creating the same tired shapes over and over again. The upturned nose, the cleft chin, the ample bosom. Wouldn't it be wonderful if I could do with a knife what that old Spaniard did with a brush? Steinman hit pause again, used his left hand to wipe some blood from the recorder buttons. He returned his patient only to find that she died on him. Oh, damn it, not another one. Blood loss and shock, he supposed as usual. It was really quite unfair. They always left him too soon. It made him angry to think of their selfishness. He slashed at her in fury, knocking the tape recorder on the floor, cutting her throat into ribbons. Long, pretty ribbons, which he then tied into bows. Then, when he calmed down enough to be precise, he exposed her breasts and cut them into shapes like sea anemones that waved in the gentle current so restlessly, so gracefully, outside the window of his office. Ah, he thought, the rapture of the deep. Fighting McDonough's Bar, 1959. When? It had to be soon. He was going to have to escape from Rapture with Elaine and their daughter, if that meant killing. Bill? Bill McDonough nearly leapt from his bar stool when Redgrave spoke at his elbow. Blimey, don't snake up on me like that. Redgrave smiled sadly. Sorry. Something you ought to know, though. You're a woman who cleans the rooms. She found something. Bill sighed. He tossed down his brandy, nodding to his bartender. Just close down to me if you like it, mate. He got off the bar stool. All right, let's have it, Redgrave. You've been let out some of your rooms, ain't you? Number 7? That was the Lutz's. Sure, I'll charge him for it. Christ, their little girl went missing on my watch. He couldn't resist a cold look at Redgrave. On your watch, too. Redgrave grimaced. I only looked away a couple of seconds for watching for splicers. I know, forget it. What about Sam Lutz? Come on. Feeling leaden, Bill went with Redgrave to the tavern's back room. Number 7's combination door was open. He stepped in and immediately saw two of them stretched out on the mattress, on their backs, side by side. Two corpses holding hands, barely recognizable as Mariska and Samuel Lutz. There were a couple of empty pill bottles lying on the floor nearby. The sunken eyes of the cadavers were closed, eyelids like wrinkled parchment, their faces yellow and emaciated. The shriveling of death had given their lips the same pinched expression of disapproval, as if they were silently judging all the living. They wore their best clothes, he noticed. Suicide. And there's this. He pointed. Beside the bodies was one of the ubiquitous tape recorders. Bill pressed play on the tape recorder. Mariska Lutz's voice came distant and tinny from the little recorder, as if speaking across the gulf of death. We saw Mariska today. We barely recognized her. That's her, Sam said. Mariska gave out a strange little sobbing laugh. You're crazy, I told them. That is our Machiska. But he was right. She was drawing blood out of a corpse. And when she was done, she walked off hand in hand with those awful golems. Our Mashka. Bill stopped the recording. Redgrave cleared his throat. Well, I expect they knew they couldn't get her back. She was already gone, changed so much. So they, He gestured limply at the pill bottles. Bill nodded. Yeah, just leave them there. I'll seal it up. This will be their crypt for now. Redgrave stared at him as if he might object. Then he shrugged. Whatever you say. He looked back at the bodies. Well, they looked away for a moment or two. He shook his head and walked out, leaving Bill alone with the dead. Atlas HQ, Hestia, 1959. Walking up to Atlas's office, Diane was still sweaty, shaking from the raid. She had had some training from Atlas guerrillas, and she was almost used to slipping through the wire, waiting as the other team created a decoy, dashing past Ryan's men. More than once she'd followed the other guerrillas up a side passage, up the stairs. There's some old maintenance passage, all of them carrying GI backpacks to fill with supplies stolen from one of the constabulary armories. But this time, when the guards broke in on them, just as they finished their harvest of the ammo, and just when Sorensen got control of the Big Daddy, the chaos had been exhilarating and nightmarish at once. Firing her own pistols, one in each hand, her heart slamming with each shot, she'd watched a constable go down, shrieking, dying. I've killed a man. She'd cringed from the blazing return fire, seen 3 of her comrades falling. She decided now to record some of her impressions on her audio diary. She had decided she was going to be the historian of the revolution. She switched to the recorder on with trembling hands as she walked along. We went on a raid outside the wire today. We sagged 31 rounds of buckshot, 4 frag grenades, a shotgun, then 34 Atom. We lost McGee, Epstein, and Valette. She swallowed hard at that. She particularly liked Valette. Too easy to reel off a list of the dead, the butcher's bill, the guerrillas called it. She went on. We got some of those goddamn big daddies in the bargain, though. It was something awful that they had to do that little girl to get that Atom. But we didn't start this thing. Ryan did. I can't wait to tell Atlas. He'll be so pleased. Diane stepped into Atlas' office to let him know they'd gotten a big daddy, and stared in surprise at the stranger sitting at Atlas' desk. He seemed to be recording an audio diary of his own. After a breathless moment, he was no longer a stranger. She hadn't recognized him at first. Something, the cold, cynical expression on his face and that sneering voice of talking of long cons, made it seem impossible that he could be anyone but Frank Fontaine. He turned a look of angry shock at her, then put on Atlas' expression. His voice became Atlas. Miss McClintock, what are you doing here? Let me just... He dropped the Atlas pretense, shaking his head, seeing her face that she knew, finishing in Frank Fontaine's voice. Turn this off. He switched the tape recorder off. It occurred to her that she should run. She found out something he would kill to keep a secret, but her feet seemed frozen to the floor. She was barely able to speak. They trusted you. How could you let them die for a lie? Fontaine stalked toward her, drawing a buck knife, opening it with a practiced motion, the blade making a snick sound as it flicked into readiness. It don't matter, kid, he said, because it's all lies. Everything is, except for... And she felt the cold blade slash upward into her belly just under her ribcage. This. Rapture Central Control, 1959. Bill McDonough paced up and down in the passageway outside Central Control. The constables at the entrance to the hall had been friendly, glad to see him, not knowing his mission. He had to make his move, and soon, then signal Wallace to take the mini-sub up to the boat. Conditions were as good as they ever were to be for an escape. The city's turbulence indicator showed the sea was fairly calm right now. Ryan's men were dealing with a new disruption, concentrated in sealing off Apollo Square. There weren't many of Ryan's bunch between here and the lighthouse. Roland Wallace wouldn't take the mini-sub unless Bill gave him the signal, but there was something he had to do then about Ryan and Rapture. He had to make up his mind that if he succeeded today in Ryan's office, he would send his family to safety but stay in Rapture, at least for a time, and try to create a new leadership, make a peace deal with Atlas. He had helped build this place. He felt an obligation to the survivors. Eventually, he could rejoin Elaine and Sophie. The survivors. Quite a surprising number of people had died here and been executed. Ryan was starting to put the corpses up on stakes in this entryway to the Central Control. Rapture had become a police state, and it turned into its own opposite. Bill let out a long, slow breath, reached for his pocket for the pistol, checked the load for the 4th time, put it back in his blazer. Could he do this? Then he remembered Sam and Mariska Lutz. "Go face it, old man," he turned to himself. "Got to be done." He put the pistol back and took out the little radio. He clicked it and murmured to it, "Wallace!" A crackle, then, "Yes, Bill?" "It's time." "Are you sure?" "I am. Go take care of my business and then bring the family for the picnic." "Okay, I'm ready. Meet you there." He put the radio away, heart pounding. He straightened his tie and opened the door. A security camera swiveled to take him in as if he stepped through. He had his ID flasher on and let him pass without releasing the security bots. Ryan still trusted him. He strode past the crucified corpses, smelling them but steadfastly not looking at them, and went to the door of Ryan's office. He was scanned by a turret and it let him pass. He reached for the door just as Karlowski came out. Bill almost jumped out of his shoes. Karlowski looked at him curiously. "Something make you nervous, Bill?" "Me no, it's just them bodies out there. Give me the wheelies." Karlowski nodded sympathetically. "Don't like the decoration either. Something necessary. I'm going to get the sandwich for me and Mr. Ryan. You want something?" "Me no, Christ. How could he eat sandwiches with these bodies stuck up there? However, well, yes, Ivan, whatever you're having." The longer Karlowski stayed away, the better. Karlowski nodded and strolled out. Bill went into Ryan's office. Andrew Ryan was standing by the window, gazing out at the sea, leaning on his walking stick. He wore his tailored 3-piece gray silk suit, and in that moment, Bill felt his heart go out on him. Ryan had built this brave new world to match his dream. It had become a nightmare. But Bill reminded himself of those men and women crucified in the outer room, and he took a deep breath and pulled the pistol. Ryan didn't turn around. He seemed to know. "Go on, do it, Bill, if you're man enough." Bill raised the gun, and it trembled in his hand. Ryan smiled sadly. "What was it you said, Bill? You'd stay with me from A to Z? Well, we're not quite at Z yet, but it seems you're taking your leave." "No," Bill said, his voice breaking. "I'm staying for a while. Can't desert all these people. I helped bring them here." Ryan turned toward him, hefting the gold-topped walking stick. "Bill, you're a weak link on the great chain, and I cannot leave that weak link in place." Bill aimed the gun at Ryan as he stalked toward him. Bill's mouth went dry, his pulse thudding. Ryan was almost in reach. "A man chooses, Bill. A slave obeys. Choose. Kill me or obey your cowardice and run away." Andrew Ryan, the man who plucked him up from obscurity, who elevated Bill McDonough into this great city, raised the walking stick to strike him down. It was in Ryan's heart and eyes, his twisted mouth. The aging tycoon had every intention of using that gold-headed cane to crush Bill's skull. Shoot him. Bill couldn't do it. This man had reached down from Olympus and raised him up to Olympus heights. Andrew Ryan had trusted him. He couldn't. The walking stick came down, whistling, and Bill caught it, wincing at the impact as he grabbed it with his left hand. They struggled for a moment, Ryan panting, his teeth bared. Then Bill acted instinctively. He struck down with the butt of the pistol like a club, cracking Andrew Ryan on the forehead. Ryan grunted and fell backward. He lay gasping on the floor, eyes half crossed. Bill found that he He had the walking stick in his own hand. He dropped it beside Ryan, then knelt and took Ryan's pulse. Ryan was stunned, unconscious, but his pulse was strong. Bill knew somehow that Ryan would survive intact. Bill released Ryan's hand. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ryan. I don't know what else to do. I can't kill you. Best of luck, Gov." He stood, pistol in hand, and started for the door, walking mechanically, feeling all lumbering and heavy like a big daddy. He stuck the pistol in his pocket and found his way out, the double line of dead men on stakes out past the swiveling camera. He stepped into the hallway, trying not to look like he was in a hurry. He and Elaine and Sophie would have to take a curious route. It was a long trek yet to get to where they were going. He didn't have much time. Karlowski would find Ryan, and there would be an alert, security bots, Ryan's thugs. He had to hurry or lose everything. They were waiting for him in the cemetery of a separate Link park off Arcadia. Cemetery near Arcadia, 1959. Burials at sea were cheap, but some preferred Rapture's charming little cemetery. Bill had liked visiting the place, and it was usually deserted, so he'd arranged to meet Elaine and Sophie here. Old-fashioned, rustic in style, the cemetery near Arcadia reminded him of the churchyard where his grandfather was buried. But when he stepped through the archways, he found it had lost its charm. 5 paces away, a naked man, painted blue, was hunched threateningly over Elaine and Sophie, who were cowered in front of a tombstone. The man was a Satyrian, one of the pagan cults who'd sprung up in the vacuum of religion in Rapture, sneaking about stalkers to paint their cryptic graffiti, getting high on Adam and coloring themselves blue. "Harness the flame, harness the mist," the man chanted in a grating voice. The blue-painted savage gripped a large kitchen knife in his right hand. Its blade was brown with dried blood. The man's bare foot was pressing Elaine's purse into the ground as if crushing a small animal. "I will give you to the flame," said the Satyrian. "I offer you the mist." The Satyrian raised his knife high to slash down at Elaine. "There's some flame, you bastard! Harness this!" Bill shouted to make him turn his way. The Satyrian whirled to confront Bill, his face a caricature of Adam, warped savagery, teeth bared, red foaming from his nostrils. He threw the knife as Bill dodged to the left. The knife slashed at his right shoulder, just a razor-thin cut, and Bill shot the pagan point blank in his chest. The Satyrian swayed, went to his knees, and flopped face down. Sophie was sobbing, her hands covering her eyes. Elaine jerked her purse from under the dead man's foot, pulled out a pistol, slung the purse over her shoulder, and, with a look of steely determination in her eyes that Bill admired, pulled Sophie to her feet. "Come on, baby," Elaine told her. "We're getting the hell out of this place." "I'm scared, Mama," Sophie said. "I know the feeling of," Bill said, giving the child a quick hug. "But you'll like the surface world. Don't believe what you heard about it. Come on." They were surprisingly close. Bill and Elaine and Sophie were hurrying up to the open bathysphere that would take them up the shaft of the lighthouse, and to where Wallace should be waiting. A rogue splicer slid down the cable, jumping off the bathysphere's top and tumbling through the air like an acrobat. He landed on his feet in front of Bill. The splicer wore a small Harlequin-style New Year's Eve mask, splashed with blood of the body he had taken it from. He had long, dirty brown hair, and a streaked red-brown beard, and glittering blue eyes. His yellow teeth were bared with a rustic-like grin. "Yeah, that's me. Oh, that's you," he cackled, leaping from right to left, back again, blur-fast, an elusive target. "Look at the little girly girl. I could sell her to Ryan or keep her for play or maybe a quick bite." He had a razor-sharp, curved fish-gutting blade in each hand. Sophie whimpered in fear and ducked behind her mother. Elaine and Bill fired their pistols at the splicer almost simultaneously, and they both missed. He leapt into the air, flipping over them and coming down behind. Sport boost, and lots of it. The rogue splicer was spinning to slash at them, but Bill was turning at the same time, firing. The bullet cracked into one of the curved blades, knocking it away. The splicer slashed out with the other blade, which cut the air an inch from Sophie's nose. Enraged, Bill forgot his gun and rushed at the splicer, shouting to him. He just managed to duck under the swishing blade and tackle the splicer around the middle, knocking him onto his back. It was like tackling a live wire. There was not a gram of fat on the splicer. It was all muscle and bone and tension, and Bill felt himself overbalanced and quickly flung off. The splicer leapt up, stood grinning down at Bill, throwing a hooked blade before Bill could fire his pistol. Bill twisted aside, felt the curved knife shear a piece of skin from his ribs. Then there were 3 quick gunshots, each one making the splicer take a jerking step back. The third one went through the splicer's right eye, and the splicer went limp, falling on its back, feet twitching. Bill turned, panting, to see his wife with a gun in her hand, a wild look in her eyes. Sophie was clinging to her mother's leg, face buried in her hip. "We are flying bloody shot, love," he told Elaine, "and thank God for that." "I had a good teacher," she said numbly, staring at the splicer's body. "Come on, into the lift." Elaine nodded and took Sophie to the bathysphere. Bill climbed on after them, found a release hidden under the control panel, and activated it. They took the bathyspheric lift up the shaft out of the undersea, 3 of them riding up to the lighthouse. Bill had cut power on the security bots and turrets guarding the way through the lighthouse this morning, but he was afraid they'd be back on, somehow, to greet his family with a spray of bullets as soon as they stepped out of the bathysphere. But only quiet greeted them, at first, when they stepped out, and the echo of their footsteps in the dome. Sophie looked around in awe, stunned by the naked daylight coming through the entrance to the lighthouse, the unfamiliar sound of breakers outside. Then, eyes wide in fear, she stared up at the enormous electroplated bust of Andrew Ryan, glaring back down at them. Ryan seemed to be holding up a banner, yellow lettering on a red field, reading, "No gods or kings, only man." "It's Mr. Ryan," Sophie gulped, stepping back. "He's watching us." "It's just a statue," Elaine said. "Oh, but she's right," said Head Constable Candafish, coming round from the other side of the bathysphere. Bill spun, raising his gun, but he saw that Karlowski was there too, and Redgrave. They all had Tommy guns at the ready in their hands. Redgrave was pushing a despondent Roland Wallace, who had his hands bound behind him. If Bill fired, the constables would return fire, and Elaine would likely be hit, and Sophie. He couldn't get them all. Bill lowered his pistol, then let it slip from limp fingers to the floor. "Drop it, lady," said Candafish, pointing the Tommy gun at her. With a sob, she dropped her gun and clutched Sophie to her. "Oh God, Bill, you're so close." He put his arm around her shoulders. "I'm sorry, love. I found a better way." Karlowski looked grim. Candafish was grinning wolfishly, but Redgrave looked stricken, uncertain, deeply sad. "I tried, Bill," Wallace said. "I got the boat here. I climbed out to look for you, and there they were, coming up in boats." "You don't reckon Ryan has cameras none of you know about," Candafish sneered, "especially outside this place. You think you're the only ones who tried to leave. Others tried. They're big daddies now. The external camera caught old Wallace here slipping out." "Ryan, is he dead?" Elaine asked. Her eyes showed hope. Her voice was defiant. "Yet," Karlowski said. "A headache, but he is a strong man. Not so easy to kill. Your man, he did not have the nerve to finish the job." "I couldn't do it," Bill admitted miserably. "He was my friend. There was a time he was like another father to me." Redgrave nodded. His voice was husky as he said, "I hear that, Mr. McDonough. Surely do. It's the same with me. I'm sorry. I'd like to help you. You're always good to me, but..." "I know," Bill said. "Let me ask you one thing. Did he send you to bring my wife and child in, or just me and Wallace?" Redgrave glanced at Candafish. "I heard him say, 'Stop Bill McDonough,' then that traitor Wallace. That's all he said." "He does not want anyone leaving," Karlowski said. "Now, all 3 of you turn around. We tie your hands. You go with us. We all go back down." Bill looked at Karlowski. "I'll take what's coming to me. You can tell him anything you want about my girls. Tell Ryan that the splicers got him." Candafish snorted. "Or else he's not doing any goddamn thing of the sort." Bill went on, looking steadily at Karlowski. "We got drunk together, you and me, Karlowski, more than once. Christmas Eves, holidays, long nights with vodka. We fought side by side in battle." Karlowski licked his lips. Comradeship mattered to Karlowski. "What's this horse shit?" Candafish growled, seeing Karlowski hesitate. "You 3 turn around, like you said." "Yes," Bill said. "Elaine, Sophie, turn around. Just do it." Their eyes welling with tears, his wife and child turned, and Bill locked eyes with Karlowski. "What do you say, mate? One favor. I know you can't let me go, but you can let them go, with Wallace." Redgrave looked back and forth between them, looking like he was trying to make up his own mind. Candavish frowned. What's all this horse pucky? Come on, let's move on. Stop wasting time. Karlowski, you damn Russian drunk. Karlowski raised his eyebrows at that. Looked thoughtful, but at last he shook his head. No, Bill, sorry. Too risky. Redgrave sighed and pointed his gun at Karlowski. Ivan, this man here and he and his wife had me over for dinner more than once. Only white people in this place have done that. I can't let Bill leave Rapture, but we didn't get no orders about his family. Candavish snarled, twitched his gun toward Redgrave. You black-ass son of a... But that's when Karlowski turned and shot Candavish in the side of his head. 2 shots. Blood and brains splashed as Candavish jerked sideways, took a shaky step, and fell. Bastard, Karlowski said, spitting on the body. Elaine and Sophie screamed, clutching at each other. Wallace stared in dull amazement. Christ, Karlowski! Elaine looked around to see what had happened, but she kept Sophie turned away. Karlowski glared at Redgrave, then looked down at Candavish. I don't like to be pushed around, Redgrave, Karlowski said, but Candavish, he was asshole. Wanted to kill him many times. And anyway, if anyone's going to insult you, it'll be me. Elaine turned slowly to them, clutching Sophie to her. She winced at the sight of Candavish's shattered head and said, Mr. Redgrave, can't you let Bill go with us? Elaine asked. Please. Redgrave shook his head apologetically, swinging the gun toward Bill. Sorry, Bill. Bill and Wallace have got to come with me. I understand, Bill said, meeting Redgrave's eyes. Ryan's the one who gave you a chance. It was same with me. The launching's idling out there, Miss McDonough. Wallace said in a dead voice. Bottom of the stairs. All you gotta do is cast off, press the drive lever, head straight the way it's pointing right now. That'll take you to the sea lanes. Someone will see you. There's a flare gun in the launch. Elaine was turning to Bill, looking stunned. No, Bill. Bill took her hand and kissed it. Elaine, you know what you have to do for Sophie. Elaine shook her head. Bill stepped closer, kissed her tear-stained lips. Then he pushed Sophie into her arms. For Sophie. Her mouth buckled, but she nodded just once. Face white, lips trembling. Elaine took Sophie by the hand and walked away from him. They walked past the bathysphere, toward that little corridor leading to the stairs. What about Daddy? Sophie asked as they went, her voice quavering. I'll talk about it later, hon, Elaine said. Daddy has some business right now. Bill's daughter looked back over her shoulder at him. Bill tried to fill his mind with that last sight he had had of her. Bye, love, he called, waving once. Your old dad loves you. Then Elaine pulled Sophie along with her, through a doorway and out of his sight. Karlowski looked at Bill, then nodded toward the nearby window. Bill walked to the window. Through it he could see sun sparkling on the sea, blue sky, white clouds sailing by. He waited, men with guns behind him, watching him. After a few minutes he saw the small vessel moving on the surface of the sea away to the northeast, to the sea lanes. Bill felt a hand on his shoulder. Let's go, he said, turning away from the window. The 4 of them got into the bathysphere, Karlowski and Redgrave, keeping their weapons on Bill and Roland Wallace. Sorry, Roland, Bill said. It's my fault, mate. Roland shook his head. I was going to try it anyway. Not your fault. Proud to know you. When they got to the bottom, there were 3 more constables waiting. Take this one to Sushang, Karlowski said, shoving Wallace toward them. Wallace went meekly with them. What are they going to do with Roland? Bill asked softly. Who knows? Redgrave said sadly. Bill tried to think about escape, but all the fight seemed to have drained out of him. He knew he wouldn't see his baby girl or his wife again, and Karlowski was good at what he did. He'd never let Bill get by him again. Bill walked ahead of Karlowski and Redgrave to the metro. The journey to Central Control was like a journey back in his mind. More than 10 years in Rapture. New York City, London, the war. That boy being sucked out in the shattered fuselage of the plane. He always felt bad, surviving when that kid had died. That young man and other men. Friends who'd gone down in burning bombers. Well, now he had the chance to be with them. They reached Central Control and he found himself in the shadow of the dead. He looked up to see the decayed corpse of Frank Fontaine stuck on a stake, like Jesus who'd missed the resurrection boat. Ryan had the body crudely sewn up there, brought here, and posted, a message to his enemies, which is what Bill was about to be. Karlowski handed Redgrave his machine gun, then drew a pistol from under his coat and stepped beside Bill. Bill heard the sound of Karlowski's cocking the gun. "Supposed to crucify you before killing," Karlowski remarked, "but I always liked you, so quick death." "I guess I should have killed Ryan," Bill said. His voice sounded thick and unnatural in his own ears. He must be gloating. "Yet he understands better than you think," Karlowski said. "All of these others out here, he watched them die, but he can't be here for this. He told me you couldn't stand to watch you die, Bill. Not a good friend like you." Bill smiled. He never heard the gunshot that killed him. Park Avenue, New York City, 1959. A warm day in July. "I'm too scared to go out there, Mama," Sophie said for the 10th time in 10 minutes. Elaine sighed. "I know, but you have to. I have something we call agoraphobia." "You have something we call agoraphobia, Sophie," the doctor said gently. He was an expensive Park Avenue psychiatrist, a kindly middle-aged man in a sweater and bow tie. He had a trim beard, a large nose, a sad smile, inquisitive eyes. But it happened he wasn't charging Elaine much. He seemed interested in Sophie's case, perhaps even interested in Elaine herself, in another way. "You have to do this, sweetheart," Elaine said. "Well, no," said the doctor. "She doesn't have to, but she wants to, really. She just has mixed feelings about it." "The sky scares me," Sophie insisted. "I know it does," the doctor smiled. "In Rapture, we don't have sky," she said. Then she sold him some more about Rapture. He listened patiently, then sent her out to wait with his receptionist so he could talk to Elaine privately. "She has a remarkable imagination," he said, chuckling. "Rapture." Elaine didn't try to explain. She couldn't tell people about Rapture. They would never believe her, and if they did, it could lead to Ryan finding her. So she just nodded. "Yes, doctor. She's been through something traumatic, perhaps a war?" he said. "Somewhere overseas?" Elaine nodded. "Yes, and war." It was true, anyhow. "I thought so. Well, she will heal, but we must start by dealing with her fears. I think, despite appearances, she will go outside today, for a walk in the park." To her surprise, the doctor offered to go with them. After a while, Sophie reluctantly agreed to try the park. They went down the elevator and walked slowly across the marble-floored lobby. Sophie became more frightened as they got closer to the street. Ever since they'd left the fishing boat that they had picked up from Iceland, she darted under cover as quickly as she could, hiding her eyes from the sky. Then the doctor turned to Sophie and said in a kindly voice, "May I carry you?" Sophie looked at him gravely. "Yes." He nodded, equally grave, and knelt by her. She put her arms around his neck and he lifted her up, carrying her piggyback out the door. Elaine walked up at his side. Elaine couldn't help making a grotesque comparison to the way Big Daddy sometimes carried little sisters, but she thrust it out of her mind. "Oh," Sophie said as they stepped into the hot sun, but she only clung harder. They walked over to Central Park. Sophie cried on the way, but didn't ask to hide from the sky. They got to the park and found an open green field with butter-colored flowers. On the edge of the field, birds sang in the trees. The doctor let Sophie down, and she walked slowly into the sunlight. "Mama," she said, shading her eyes to look up at the blue sky. "It's nice out here. It just goes on and on. You know what?" "What?" "I think Daddy would have liked seeing this." "Yes, Sophie," Elaine said, just managing not to cry. "Yes, love. Yes, he would have." Thank you. That was the final chapter of Bioshock Rapture. Thank you for listening, and I will see you again very soon.
They told me, "Son, you're special. You were born to do great things." You know what? They were right.